Good morning, everybody. Yesterday we were learning about thousandths, thinking about decimals this week, and today we're going to be rounding and ordering some decimals. So when we're rounding any kind of number, it's important to remember the golden rule of rounding, which is that if something ends in a 5 or above, so a 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9, it rounds up. If it ends in 4, 3, 2 or 1, it rounds down. The other important thing to remember is that you always look at the column or house before the digit that you're rounding to see whether it'll round up or down. So for example, question 1 in challenge 1 says, round these hundreds to the nearest whole number. Now 7 is the whole number in this example, it's 7.61. So I'm looking at the 6 to know whether I will round it up or down. I know that 6 rounds up. So to the nearest whole number, A, 7.61 is 8. 7.61 rounded to the nearest whole number gives us 8. If we look at F for another example, it's 5.39. I'm rounding to the nearest whole number, so I look at the column or house before that, which is the tenths, to see which way I'm going to round it, up or down. Now in the tenths house I have a 3. And I know that 3 rounds down, so the nearest whole number is 5. Another way to think of that is to imagine or sketch a quick number line and think to yourself, where would I put 5.39 on a number line? So we know it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 6. 5.5 is halfway, 5.5. So we would probably put 5.39, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. It's going to be very close to 5.4, but not quite at 5.4. So you'd probably put 5.39 about here. And you can see that it is closer to 5. So when you visualize it on a number line, sometimes that helps you to see why we round down or up. Challenge 1, question 2 says put these thousandths in order smallest to largest. So if we look at A, first of all, we can see that the ones column is all the same. It's got 1 in there. So we're going to have to go to the next column, which is the tenths, to see which one is the smallest. Now we have 8, 2, 3 and 5. So I can see that this one is the smallest. So I'm going to start off with 1.265. Next will be the 3, so 1.326. Next will be the 5, so 1.587, and that leaves us with 1.873. And it's the same in question C. The ones house is all the same, it's all 6. So I'm going to do the same thing again, and I'm going to look at the tenths house to see what would come first. There's nothing in the tenths house here. We have 5, 3 and 4, so the tenths house with nothing in it would come first, so 6.013, followed by the 3, so 6.308, then the 4, 6.478, and finally the 5, 6.592. So if one house or column is the same for each number, go to the next house or column. If that's the same, then move on to the next one. And just keep going until you find a house or column where the digits are different, and that will enable you to order the decimals. Challenge 2, question 1 says draw a table like the one shown with a total of 13 rows. Write the numbers down, write the numbers below in the middle column. So we have A to L there. Round the numbers to the nearest tenth and whole number, and the first two have been done for you as an example there, and I'm going to do another one for you now as an example. I'm going to start off by rounding it to the nearest whole number. It's 4.78, so we want to round it to the nearest whole number. Then we need to see what the number in the next column is, which is the tenths, and there's a 7 in there. I know that 7 rounds up, so 4.7 will round up to 5. Next I'm going to think about the nearest tenth. So if I'm trying to round to the nearest tenth, I look in the next column, which is the hundredths, and it's got an 8 in it. And I know that 8 rounds up. So that means that it's going to round up. 78 is going to round up to 4.8. Again, if we think about where 4.78 would be on the number line, it helps us to visualize it. So in between 4.7 and 4.8, it's going to be closer to 4.8. And that helps us to round. So we can see, obviously, that it rounds to the nearest tenth, which is 4.8, but also we can see that if we're rounding it to the nearest whole number, it's much closer to 5 than it is to 4. So it rounds up to 5. In challenge 2, question 2, once again you're putting thousandths in order. And in question 3 it says add 1,000th to each of these numbers. So let's do an example. We're adding 1,000th. Now with place value, it's very important to remember what each house represents. So we have our ones house, followed by our decimal point, then our tenths, hundredths and thousandths. We're adding 1 to the thousandths column or house. So if I add on 1 to that, it becomes 2.899. In B, you can see that in my thousandths column here I already have a 9, which means when I add 1 onto it, it's going to carry over into the next house, which is the hundredths. So just be careful with that. That'll give me 4.130, or simply 4.13. In challenge 3, question 1 says explain how to round decimal numbers with 2 places to the nearest decimal with 1 place. Well, you're all very familiar with the rules of rounding by now, so that should be okay. And in question 2, once again, we are ordering the decimal numbers from smallest to largest. So again, use the same method as we did before. If the ones are the same, look at the tenths. If the tenths are the same, look at the hundredths, and so on.